That's a bass, huh? That's a slab crappie, man. It just doesn't get any better.
The smallmouth here in Champlain is phenomenal.
Hey guys, how you doing? And welcome back for another weekend roundup. It is Sunday night here, and wow, I think we're getting a break here in the Poconos. I think the weather is finally starting to give us a little break. A little bit of rain coming our way. Hopefully that thunder and lightning doesn't interrupt our show. But we have a great show lined up. I got my good friend Katie Corgiat joining us today, and we're going to talk to her about if you're out for a destination trip, just be sure, how do you pack your tackle box? There's a lot of things to talk about. But before we get Katie on, a few folks I got to thank. This week, I got to thank Stanley Jigs. Yeah, new sponsor working with us, Stanley Jigs. Who doesn't have a Stanley in their box, right? So Stanley is the, baits that bring dreams to reality since 1979. Great bunch of folks. I hope you guys check them out at fishstanley.com. Also, Tony Majah products. Tony and his team always had the best stuff for his stripers. Don't forget, those stripers will be coming back down really soon. So be sure you get those bunker spoons, those mojos, those custom rods, easy out rodders, all the stuff you need to get in those 50-pound striper. TonyMajahProducts.com. Also, the Fisherman Magazine. Jim Hutchinson gives you all the latest tips for this week ahead. You might even catch me, give me a little bit of hint what's happening right here in the Poconos. So check them out, thefisherman.com, and get all the tips, tactics, and tackle you need to be a better fisherman. Well, I'm really looking forward to this show, especially with all the things happening this year. There's been so much, going on. People have been dying to get out and do a little fishing and maybe even trying to do some vacationing, maybe take that trip, go somewhere, and maybe they're just looking to go and get, do a little fishing away from home. Well, we're talking to Katie Corgiat today, and I know she does a little bit of travel, and she goes from Minnesota to the Florida coast, and she's all over the place when it comes to fishing. So we're going to talk to her, and let's bring her in right now. My good friend, Katie Corgiat. Hey, Katie.
Hello. Hi, George. How are you?
I'm doing great, Katie. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic. Living the dream here in Minnesota, don't you know?
Minnesota, don't you know? Yeah. So what's happening up there? Everything good? You guys out doing any kind of fishing at all?
Yes. Obviously with this pandemic, everything is up in the air. Every state has different regulations. It's kind of a big question mark right now. I know for me personally, I had a bunch of trips planned. I kind of scouted out my whole spring and summer, and that went boop. So right. The whole situation right now is, how do you make the best of it? Where's that silver lining? And it might be right in your backyard and you didn't even know it. So that's really been the situation.
That's true. Hey, we got good friend Jen Wong joining us. Say, hey, Jen, how you doing today, buddy?
Jen.
And let's see. I would say Tony Majah gear is the stuff. Yeah, Tony Majah is the stuff. Tony's got some great stuff there. We all love his products for stripers and whatnot. So, yeah, absolutely. So I know you travel quite a bit, especially summer. I know you like hitting that saltwater. You go from, pike and bass in Minnesota, and then next thing you know, you're catching giant sharks and God knows what down in Florida. You're all over the place.
Exactly right. And, it's for me personally, it's been really great because through Instagram and through other social media outlets, I've been able to make a lot of great friends along the way there too, which is nice. And so based upon where I'm traveling, I do a lot of travel for my job, my day job. And so what ends up happening there is typically I'll know that I'm going to a location for a couple days. Maybe I have the luxury of extending a day since I'm out there, and then kind of reaching out to those contacts to figure out, hey, what's running, what kind of fish are going on, and then I can kind of prepare appropriately. Now, not everyone kind of has that situation. So I think based upon the spectrum of where you're at, if you're very, very new into fishing, but maybe you're taking that RV trip with the kids and the family, and you're going to a couple different states and you'd love to bring a couple rods, versus someone who is a little bit more skilled and looking to target a certain species. I mean, there's a lot of great opportunity when we talk about destination fishing and how you can best be prepared going into something that's very unknown.
Well, how about you take us through some of the things, like what do you put in your tackle box? And, I know it depends on where you're going, but there's got to be some like basic things you take with you, no matter where you're going. You got your favorite lures, your confidence lures. How about you take us through a little bit of that so we can get a flavor of if we want to go on a destination trip, what's some things to pack best?
Absolutely, George. Thank you. And for everyone watching, please feel free to ask me any questions as we go through this, because I know that you're all across the United States, maybe even international. So I'd love to tailor it to you a little bit. But what I'm going to do is kind of take you through some of my essentials that I travel with. Now, the first thought is not a lot of people are going on an airplane right now. But if you have the luxury of being able to fly by a plane, of course, everyone's wearing their lovely masks, right? Make sure you're safe first and foremost. But thinking about how do you make the best use of limited space, and then how do you materialize on the essentials, but being prepared for multiple situations. So the very first thing that I like to look at is how do you make a bag be the best use of a bag. So I have a couple of what these are called dry bags, and what they are is it's a waterproof bag. It has a lot of room within it, and so I try and cram as much of my tackle if I'm going on an airplane in something like this versus bringing your kind of harder, more concrete tackle boxes. Another thing that's really just kind of a hack is Ziploc baggies are your friend. So once again, anytime you're using some kind of structured tackle box or compartments, it takes up a lot of room. So being able to use Ziploc baggies and put your lures in them, and you can, put maybe 4 or 5 lures in a bag or 2, really helps you with saving that space. So once again, a couple different dry bags, and that's usually what I store my equipment in. Then when you talk about rods, once again, people who are kind of in the introductory side of fishing, they might be more used to the little caster where you just press the button and it spools out, or flipping the bail, a spinning reel. So what I typically travel with is I'll try and do 2 different rods, both collapsible so that they would fit in a carry-on or a suitcase, and then having them be set up in 2 different manners. One is which is called a spinning reel, and then the other is called a casting reel. So I'm going to give you kind of a quick example of how tiny these travel compartments can be. So this is just an example of the Mitchell Outback rod. And then what is nice about these types of travel rods, and you don't have to go with any specific brand, but really you don't have to spend a lot either. I mean, the rods that I'm showing you here were probably about $20. So it's your basic rod that you can pick up at any given, Shields, Gander Mountain, Bass Pro, what have you. This one, the first one I'm showing you, this is called a telescopic rod. So what's nice about this is you can see it collapses down, and what you can do is just really pull this rod out, and it's very, very simple to travel with. I also don't like investing a whole lot in rods like this because let's say I am on the beach in Florida and I hook into something that's a little bit bigger. If the rod snaps, I'm not going to be absolutely heartbroken. So that's just something to consider as well. The nice part about this rod too is there's a lot of flexibility with what kind of reel you put on it. And once again, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You could even go with something as simple as your traditional Zebco reel and attach it to this rod and be good to go. This rod can be used for kind of like a bobber setup, which we'll talk about in a little bit, or artificial lures. The other type of rod that I have here, and I'm just showing kind of the larger version, and then I'll show the collapsed version. This is called a casting rod. So the difference here is with these bait casters, this is a specific rod that's used more for artificial lures than anything. You could try and put a bobber on here. I would be amused to see how that goes for you, because these things can be very finicky with light tackle. So typically you use bait casters for lures that are a little bit heavier, that require some finesse, or something that you're really trying to do a lot of casting and you don't want to have a sore shoulder. So I try and have one of these rods and then the one I just showed you, the casting rod, with me. There are a couple different ways in which you can have these set up. So this is an example of an Okuma Travel Rod. This is a tube. So it's something that you can bring with you on the airplane. It can be counted as a carry-on and fit no problem in a larger suitcase as well. And what the setup is here is you have the rod, and I will just undo this so you guys can see what it looks like. You have 4 to 5 pieces for your rod that are all kind of secured in here. So you're able to just put it together and go. I'm not going to put it together for the sake of time right now, but just showing you how simple that can really be. Once again, to put all the pieces together and then collapse it again, put it in this nice little tube and bring it back home with you. So that's kind of my typical setup. I will be honest, there have been times when I go down to Florida. My lovely grandma used to live down in Florida, and so we'd have a lot of family vacations down there. And my life hack would be we go to like a Walmart, and there is a rod and reel set that's at Walmart that's called a Shakespeare Tiger. And it's like, $17 to $20 depending upon your location for the combo rod and reel. And it's something that worked really, really well for me while I was out on the beach fishing for some heavier, stronger fish. And then I wasn't heartbroken after spending the $20 where I bought it in Florida. I didn't have to take it with me on the plane. And then I could leave it with a friend down there, or if I wanted to, I could ship it back home and bring the reel home with me. So that's kind of just covering the basics. And then we'll get into lures in a little bit.
That's really great. I want to thank Ant Glasgow is joining us as too. Hello, Ant. How you doing, buddy? Thank you again for joining us. And Jen Wong says, "Hey, Katie." So
Hello.
good to see you, Jen. Yeah, Jen's a real big bass fisherman out here. He fishes some tournaments, so he's a pretty well-known guy here in the bass world out here on the East Coast. So
awesome. Well,
yeah,
hopefully, Jen, I have an opportunity to fish with you sometime.
Yeah, there you go. So what else we got, Katie? I mean, that's great. We got a couple of great rods. How about like tackle and stuff? I mean, there's just so many things to take with you.
Absolutely. So I like to kind of compare this to building the house, right? So we just poured the concrete foundation with the rods and the different kinds of bags. Now we can start looking at building the structure of the house, and then what are we going to put in the rooms? How much room do we have? So one thing that I do want to point out first is, let's say you're going to a place that you have absolutely no idea what you're doing, right? You don't know how deep the lake or the river or the ocean is where you're fishing. One of the best recommendations I have for you, and if you talk about high quality and kind of bang for your buck, is Deeper Sonar. So Deeper is a portable sonar. It's a fish finder in your hand, right? So if you have a smartphone, iPhone or Android compatible, you can download the app. And then the nice part about this Deeper is you can tie it on a fishing line or a rope. If you cast this out wherever you're at, you're going to get a live feed of how deep the water is that you're fishing, what kind of structure there might be, are there weeds? Hi, Skip. I see my friend Skip from Florida just joined, so thank you. And Skip and I do a lot of fishing together. I miss you, man. I hope to get down there soon. Say hi to Holly for me. So with Deeper Sonar, there's a few different kind of models out there, but it allows you to see the different structure, the water temperature, and of course, the most important part, are there fish where you're fishing? So it's a really essential tool for those that are using, fishing tackle off of the shoreline. So I just showed a few different models. I'll grab all three of them so you can see. There are actually 4 models out on the market right now, and I have 3 of them, but this one is called the Start. So it gives you your quick, easy, hey, where are the fish at and how deep is it? And then these next 2 are a little bit more elevated models. They're called the Pro Plus. I have the Pro Plus. There's a Pro out there, and then the Chirp. And this one is the newest model that's out there, and it gives you kind of the most crystal clear real-time view of fish sonar. So once again, if you're looking to really invest in fishing, you're doing a lot of shore fishing now, highly recommend using one of these. Now let's get into your basics for tackle. So first, before we get into that, it looks like my lovely mother said that you rock. Well, it's thanks to you that I'm here. So thanks, Mom. Love you. So when we look at tackle, some of the essentials are, the first questions we want to ask are, what kind of fish are we targeting? If we don't know the answer to that question, we're saying it's a family vacation, want to keep it simple, let's do some kind of bobber setup. No problem. What I bring with me everywhere in this lovely velour bag, once again, you can use a Ziploc baggie, you can use some kind of pouch. This is my terminal tackle essential kit. So everywhere I go, I bring this, and it has a few different things in it. So one of the first things that you need on line to kind of help your bait, if you're using live bait especially, get down to the bottom, are sinkers. So I always carry a nice little mixed pack here of different kinds of sinkers. They're at different weights and also different types of sinkers. So this allows me to be be flexible to the point where I could do a bobber setup. I could do what's called a drop shot rig, where I could kind of tie a hook in the middle of my line, have a weight sit on the bottom, and then put some artificial on there to get some great fish. a lot of flexibility, definitely an essential. Looks like we had, oh, my friend Nate chimed in, said, hey, let's get out fishing again. Hey, Nate, thanks for joining. Definitely agree. And we'll have to have a competition to see who catches the most fish next time. In terms of your other essentials, so I have a lot to show you here, but I'm just going to focus on kind of the categories. One of the biggest things that I'm an advocate of is you can never have enough fishing hooks, period. Because no matter what kind of fishing you are wanting to do, or if you kind of shift over your lures, being able to have that flexibility, not only on the size of different hooks, but kind of what the hook is intended to do. Is it meant more for live bait? Is it something that for trout, for example, trout are very finicky fish, but let's say you don't have flies at your disposal, but you want to be very, very finesse and maybe use a worm or something, having a tiny, tiny hook so that they don't see that is an important thing. And then going past the hooks, another important part of this is how do we kind of keep the artificial lure secure? So maybe for me, for example, I go to a location, I might be targeting bass, but northern pike are around. So northern are known as toothy critters, and they will snap pretty much every line you can throw at them unless you have a leader. So I always carry leaders. This one is a Berkeley leader. I do have both the 6-inch and the 9-inch Berkeleys that I carry with me. So I highly recommend anytime you're throwing an artificial lure, make sure you have these with you. These are a wire-coated leader that makes it very helpful. Looks like Samantha Marie joined us. Hi, Samantha and Clifford. My dear friend from Stanley Jigs, looks like he just joined us too. So hi, Clifford. Thanks for tuning in. A couple other things, and now we're going to get to the fun stuff, which is the actual lures. So swivels. Swivels are really, really important. I use these a lot in Florida. One example of the swivel being used would be if you are running a main line on your rod, and then you want to have some kind of leader. So that leader could be a wire leader like I just showed you, or it could be something that is called fluorocarbon. So what I do in Florida often is I create my own leaders. So I buy, this is actually an example of monofilament, but it's a 50-pound mono spool of line. So what I'll do is I'll snip off a good chunk of this line, anywhere from 18 to 30 inches long. And then I'll tie one end of it to the swivel, and then the other end I'll tie a hook on, and that's it. That's all I need. And I, believe it or not, I've actually brought in shark off the beach off of something that simple. So that's definitely a nice essential to have. Okay, so I've talked about hooks. I've talked about leaders. Bobbers I've talked about, but I haven't shown you a lot of bobbers. One thing that I will recommend for families that maybe you're traveling with kids, you're used to the traditional bobber where you can go ahead and just, pull up the spring and slip this onto the line. Keep it very simple. That is your main recommendation to keep it simple. I mean, you can put worms on there, minnows, whatever live bait you'd like to have would be great. There is a different type of bobber that I do recommend, especially if you're traveling and you are looking to target, maybe it's trout, maybe you are looking to target bass or pike, but it's deeper water. But you want to make it simple for the kids to use that structure too. So this is called a slip bobber. And the nice part about this slip bobber is what it does is it actually threads right onto the line, and then you use different kinds of ties. Of course, I use pink because I love pink. So you can use different kinds of ties and a little bead. And this way, when you set this up, and there are a lot of tutorials on YouTube for how to do that too. So what you can do is then adjust this bobber on the line so that you could be fishing in 15, 20, even 30 feet of water, and you are able to actually fish it and get your bait to the bottom of where that structure is with a slip bobber. So I highly recommend that you always pack those as well. Okay, once again, any questions that you guys have, feel free to ask me. It looks like we have more people joining in. Amber, thanks for joining. So fun to virtually have you on here. Okay, so when we look at travel and what kind of lures we'd like to include, so I like to have a variety of lures. For me personally, I tend to go towards what are called plastics, soft plastics. So with a plastic, it emulates a bait fish, it emulates some kind of critter, whether that's a crayfish, other fish that are in the water, and it gives you that very real movement versus something that is more structured, right? So when we talk about a hard plastic lure, kind of your traditional fishing lures. So recommendations that I have on that is to have a little bit of both with you. So what I typically do, I know I told you that Ziploc baggies are, you know, the preferred hack of mine for lures, but I do every once in a while, especially if you're traveling by car and you have the space, love using some kind of structured compartment, some kind of plastic here. Before I go into that, looks like we have a couple comments. Bubba, hi Katie from your favorite bait shop. Hi Bubba, thanks for joining in. I just saw Bubba the other day, and Bubba knows that I spend a lot of my time at that bait shop. Clifford asked, what is your favorite type of fish to target? Oh, Clifford, you ask me such hard questions. So when I'm here in freshwater, my favorite fish of all time is northern pike. Up in Minnesota, we have a huge population of northern pike, and we have some that get, I'm not even kidding, like this big. Really big fish, really aggressive. And so that's something that is near and dear to my heart. Bass are great, but pike always seems to win over my heart every time. When it comes to saltwater, the beauty of saltwater for me, and I've been really spoiled on it, is there are so many different species that you can target, whether you are inshore fishing, whether you're offshore fishing, using live or artificial. If you go out there and you don't catch anything, it's kind of a rare situation. So when I am out there, my favorite thing to target, I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie now that I've gotten into bigger fish, would be shark. Hands down shark, because you can spend hours hooked up to one fish and you're trying to figure out if you're going to give up first or that fish is going to give up first and what's going to happen. It's sometimes the most heartbreaking but exciting fishing that's out there. Great question. Thank you for asking. Okay, so back to kind of my first setup that I'm going to show you. So if I was going to go somewhere that I'm not used to, maybe I'm heading across the border from Minnesota to Wisconsin for the weekend. Wisconsin also has some great fishing waters. For me personally, I'd be targeting bass in northern, probably there as well. The first step for you is, once again, figuring out what kind of fish you're going to target, right? If you're going for panfish, you don't need lures that are this big. But for something where I want to kind of keep my options open, maybe I want to target bass, northern, walleye, fish that are more of a predatory fish. What I like to do is kind of arm myself with different artificials. So this nice little container, I've kind of segmented, and I'll show you in a little bit. One side, I like to keep those hard plastic lures in here, your traditional type of lures. And then the other side, I reserve for more of your kind of softer plastics. So breaking this apart, my recommendation would be to keep it simple, right? Because the reality is, how many of us are going to go through every single one of these lures when we only have a couple hours to fish? Probably not going to happen. You're going to tie the first lure on. You're going to be frustrated because you haven't caught anything with it, and you're going to fish with it for too long. But you want to give yourself options. So when I look at these type of lures, the first things that I think about are, what kind of fishing am I going to be doing? Am I going to be on a boat? Am I going to be on shore? Because that limits your options too. You know, if I'm on shore, maybe I'm in a lake situation where there's a deep structure where, you know, maybe it drops from 5 to 20 feet. Fantastic. Then you could go with something that's like a heavier duty crankbait and really get down there. But the reality is, from shore, you're going to be targeting things that are probably more towards the top water. So what I like to do is figure that out first. And if I'm on the boat, then I give myself a lot of options. Otherwise, if I'm shore fishing, what I'll do is I'll pack a couple lures that are meant to be subsurface lures. So that means that they're lures that are going anywhere from maybe 3 feet down to 15 feet based upon how deep they are and how quickly I'm reeling them in. And then others that I could consider to be topwater lures. So a topwater lure is just like it sounds, right? It's sitting on top of the water. It's having some kind of movement or vibration that attracts the fish on the top. So I like to use topwaters everywhere I go in the summer because that water temperature is high. fish tend to kind of come up to the surface, bass, especially by lily pads, for example. So what I would like to do is, you know, throw something like this guy. This is called a jitterbug. And so when this guy is thrown, he kind of scuttles on the top of the water, right? And you get some nice activity there. There's also a great lure that I've had a lot of hits with bass and northern on. This is called kind of like a spook. So this guy sits on the top of the water too, and you can bring it in kind of an erratic fashion. These two are definitely ones that I'd say anytime you go somewhere and you're looking to use artificial, use a spook and use, you know, your jitterbug. Okay, and then when I talk about lures that are more of your subsurface lures, crankbaits are definitely a must. So when we talk about crankbaits, there's a couple different styles of crankbaits that I recommend. I always have one of each. So this is called a lipped crankbait. So based upon the size of this lip, it's going to dive in the water as you retrieve it at a different kind of depth. So, you know, based upon the size of that spoon. And when you go and you buy these lures, if you look at the packaging, it's going to tell you on the side that information. Versus this is a lipless crankbait. So, you know, it's really good. It has that shaky motion. Not sure if you can hear that. Really good at attracting the fish there as well. So when you look at a bait store, like you go into a Bass Pro or a Shields, you see these things and you see about like 15,000 different colors and you're saying, which one do I pick? Do I pick it because I think it's pretty, or is the fish going to be attracted to it, right? The two main colors that I tend to gravitate towards, no matter what type of situation I'm going into, are white and then something that is a black or a gray and black. I mean, these two types of lures for me, whether I'm using this type of artificial, whether I'm using soft plastics, always, always, always produce. Now, based upon the type of water that you're in, one might produce better than the other. So for example, maybe we have really, really clear water, right? The darker pattern here, if it's a sunny day, this guy's going to stand out big time. White is too, right? But let's say you're in a murky situation. Well, this white, maybe the fish will notice it, but if you're in a murky situation where there's sunlight and this guy goes buzzing by, that dark shadow is going to attract that fish. So that's something that I always recommend that you have. And then there's just something about tiger stripe or a fire tiger pattern that seems to really get fish's attention. So this is a lure that I often throw. I've thrown this for trout, salmon, walleye, bass, pike. It's kind of a main lure for me that I would use. This is a Rapala. It has a nice little furry or fluffy on the end too. That seems to, even though I don't know if it's scientifically proven, seems to get more strikes that way as well with this double treble hook situation. This is considered a subsurface lure. So it's something that, once again, I think is kind of a mainstay. If you have any questions on these lures, please feel free to chime in. I'm going to switch us over to my favorite, which are plastic lures right now. So have a little bit of a bias because it's summer. And for me right now, the water temperatures are really high. The fishing has slowed down a little bit, but every time I'm out on the water, I'm always seeing activity and hearing noises around the lily pads. And so it's a very, very fun time to be throwing frogs. So my favorite frog out there in the entire world is Stanley Jigs Ribbits and Popping Toads. So these are frogs that come in a large variety of colors. There's a nice setup that you can get from Stanley Jigs with this double hook situation where you can just use the little screw that's on the top here and screw your froggy in and use it over and over again. And it's weedless because the two hooks sit on the top. So I love the regular ribbit, which is what I'm showing you here as a great topwater lure. Once again, something that you can literally throw right into lily pads and just kind of bring it in over the lily pads and entice fish to hit it. This one is my all-time favorite though. This is the Popping Toad. So the nice part about this, you can kind of see his little kisser. Mwah! With this frog, when you bring this in and you do a quick crank of the reel, it makes, not only does it make a noise, but it moves a lot of water. So it really acts as a popper. And so this, once again, entices a lot of bites. I've been using this the last week and I'm catching a lot of northern and bass off of it. So always have the frogs in summer for sure. The other types of lures that I am very partial to are called your swim bait lures. So when we talk about a plastic, you want something that emulates a minnow, because when I do use live bait, I use a lot of sucker minnows. As Bubba from the bait shop knows, I've bought, you know, probably thousands of sucker minnows from the bait store at any given point in time. So you can see with this here, I have kind of a jig set up, and this is called a chatterbait situation. So that's the type of lure when this is swimming in the water. It's pushing water, it's vibrating, and you'll actually feel the vibration if it's running correctly on your rod as you're bringing it in. And you can see I've taken that swim bait, this what we call a trailer, and put it on there. This is about a 4-inch. It's a Yamamoto Seiko lure. It's become my favorite plastic of all time. It seems to be pretty resilient, and this movement entices a lot of bites. I literally just caught a northern on this 2 days ago. So same thing, I carry these in black and white wherever I go. This chatterbait is really another favorite of mine because it's the white, but it's hard to see with this lighting, but it actually is chartreuse as well. Chartreuse is my, outside of black and white, that's my mainstay color that I always throw, and it seems to produce bites. So to that point, what I like to recommend is getting a couple different jig heads, different sizes. You might want like an 1/8 of an ounce, a 1/4 of an ounce, depending upon how big the fish are that you're targeting, and then get creative with it. You know, have fun figuring out what kind of trailers you want to have. Do you want something that's like this grub here, where once again, I am showing you the chartreuse color, but it has that fun curly Q tail that has a lot of movement in the water, versus something like this I've used for walleye, where you have a heavier weighted jig head here. It's kind of a minnow looking thing. You have the chartreuse tail, so that gets the fish's attention, but it is more of your silver and white kind of mainstay, so it looks like a minnow in distress. So these are just some examples of the plastics that I carry with me. Like I said, using a lot of the jig head structures, a lot of different variation in colors. I do tend to gravitate towards the greens, the chartreuses, silvers, and even gold too. So that's kind of what is in my main tackle box, let's say, if I was going on an airplane.
So that's really interesting. I mean, it's I mean, all of us have tremendous amounts of tackle, of course, but you're barely paring it down to things like a couple of specific varieties, so you have a little of everything. No matter what kind of a condition you hit, you're able to get into fish, whether it's on the surface where you can get on the bottom. You don't have to bring your entire tackle collection, but a little bit of something, so you can always get on some fish no matter what you do.
Absolutely. And I noticed my godmother, Marielle, actually chimed in and said she loves the frogs and the popping one. I agree with you, Marielle, you have great taste.
Well, who doesn't like frog fishing? That's for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have a lot more lures to show. I know we only have a certain amount of time, but I wanted to at least show you what is in my kind of main, when I'm looking at a new situation, what lures entice the most bites for me.
Sure. Why don't you tell us about that, Katie?
Sure. So I went through kind of the main tackle box. Now let's say that we're driving to a destination. So you guys are taking your trip in the RV or in the truck. You do have a little bit more liberty for what you're bringing. I mentioned to you that jigs with a trailer of an artificial lure seem to be something that for me, I'm always throwing lures of that type. That's just kind of my comfort lure situation, if you will. So what I end up doing is I actually have another one of these nice little setups here where I have put a bunch of different jig heads in this nice little compartment. So you can see that I have jig heads that vary based upon color, based upon what type of jig head it is. Is it something where it's more of a swim jig, right? Where you're casting and you're retrieving, or you're slowly kind of jerking it on the way in, versus something like a Ned rig, which the Ned head or the mushroom head is something where this jig can be, you can put some kind of creature or critter, what have you, on the back of this, and have this be something where you have it sink all the way to the bottom of the structure that you're fishing, and then you can kind of pop it and do a little bit more vertical jigging and retrieving on your way in. So I like to have one specific little container that has all these different types of jig heads. Once again, my recommendation is to have jig heads that range from 1/8 of an ounce to up to like 1/2 of an ounce or more. If you're doing saltwater fishing, obviously you can go a little bit bigger than that. And then looking at plastics. Now this might seem a little obscene, but I do have one large container all full of my plastics. So you can see I've organized these based upon color and kind of the size too. My recommendation is if you're going for fish that are, 12 inches or larger, obviously not like your behemoth sharks, right? But we're talking about freshwater and saltwater fish that range from 12 inches to maybe 30 some inches or so. Throwing lures that range between 3 to 5 inches long, or plastics, I should say, having your trailers be something where maybe it's like this guy. I think this is about a 4-incher, maybe a 3-inch trailer. You can see it here versus something like this. This is a larger, different kind of trailer. This is called, both of these are called a paddle tail. So you can see that tail wiggles and kind of moves water as you cast and retrieve. So I would bring something, maybe not this entire deal, but what I would do is I would take my handy Ziploc baggie and kind of hand pick maybe anywhere from 5 to 10 of these different plastics based upon the colors. Have a variety of colors with you, and then maybe pack 1 or 2 of your favorite colors just in case you do end up getting a fish that destroys it and you're heartbroken because you don't have any more white lures. You're like, no. Let's see, I have a response. It looks like you are not only so knowledgeable, but you're gorgeous. Aw, thank you. That's very nice. I appreciate that. And Chris says, awesome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope that this is helpful.
Yeah, a couple of regulars here on the show. I know Chris has been on here quite often, so it's good to see you guys. Thank you again for tuning in. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love top water. I'm sometimes a little partial to top water. I do have a nice little container here. I believe this is the Flambeau. So you can see with this container, it is set up so that I could put top water lures in here. I could put a couple different jigs or like spinnerbaits in here as well if I wanted to. This has been my favorite little lure for bass recently. So it's it's called a buzz plug. And the nice part about this top water lure is twofold. So you can hear it. It shakes as you go through the water. So it irritates the fish in a good way. But then also this nice little blade in the front here makes noise and it displaces that water again. So any fish that are in the immediate vicinity will tend to go after this. So that's one great example. One lure that my friend Stephanie Lawson showed me, and I think she might still be on watching. So hi, Stephanie, if you are. She's a fellow member. Actually, she's the vice president of Women Anglers of Minnesota. Woo woo! Is the bass bug. So we fished a tournament together, Stephanie and I, a couple years ago, and she pulled this lure out, and I'm like, what is this thing? This is awesome. So it looks like a cute little ball here, and what this guy does is, once again, he shakes like a big bug on the top of the water and gets the bass's attention. So I have this in a couple of different colors. The one that I showed you was more of your white and your green. And Stephanie just commented saying, my favorite lure, right? I thought of you as soon as you showed me those. I was like, I need to have them. So this one is more of a blue-black color. This one, the other one is chartreuse and white. And then I believe that the one that Stephanie was using, maybe I'm wrong, this was a dark green color and it has some crackling on the bottom. So I do throw all 3 of these. I will be honest, the most hits that I've had have come from the chartreuse one. So once again, chartreuse is my favorite. So we went from your plastics to more of your top water. I do have some more top waters that we could go into, but something I haven't even touched on, 2 kind of mainstays, especially for bass fishing, are worm setups and then spinnerbaits. So one thing that I'll show you. We
got to watch our time, Katie.
Oh, say again?
We have to watch our time a little bit. We are getting close.
Okay, well, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of both of these. So when it comes to worms, so what I like to do is called a Wacky Worm Set Up. You can see that there are different kinds of worms that I have set up in here and use kind of a tube. So what you can do is kind of rig it so that the worm sits vertically or horizontally, you have the hook in the middle of the worm, and then when it falls, it's making some kind of vibration in the water, and that attracts the fish. So that's something that is really a mainstay, a very simple lure to use for bass fishing. From a spinnerbait perspective, lots of different spinnerbaits, different colors. I like to use the baits that have more of this longer blade, and Stanley Jigs has a lot of really, really great spinnerbaits that they've sent me, and so I've been trying and kind of like playing with the different types of spinnerbaits, but my favorite so far has been a Fighter Tiger pattern, so that's what I've been using a lot of. When we talk about where you can get these lures and how do you even start with this situation of destination fishing, right? Few recommendations. So do a little bit of research wherever you plan on going. Google the location you're going, type in bait store after it, or fishing store, tackle store. So there are a lot of, many people think of those big box retailers, Gander Outdoors, Shields, Bass Pro, Cabela's, but there are a lot of little mom and pop shops that might be just around the street from wherever you're going from a destination perspective, or if you're driving along the way. So always don't be intimidated. Talk to the people that work there. I mean, they're very knowledgeable. They're passionate about the outdoors industry, which is why they're there. So I'd always recommend going there and talking with them and just asking them what fish are biting right now, what kind of recommendations do you have on how deep I should be fishing, and hey, here are my favorite lures, anything else that I should maybe have. That would definitely be a recommendation I have. One that my mom taught me, which I think is brilliant too, is if you're too shy to talk to the bait store owner or employees, you could just sit in the parking lot while you're about to go in. Might sound a little creepy, but as you're walking in, someone's walking out, ask them what they're doing. Ask them if they're fishing around here. Say, hey, I'm new, I'm out of town. What would you recommend? So those are 2 tricks I have. And then every state pretty much has some kind of regulatory body. In Minnesota, it's the DNR, Department of Natural Resources. Florida has the Fish and Wildlife. So every state has that regulatory body where there's the website you can go to that has tips and tricks. It has regulations, help you to understand what kind of fish, what kind of lakes or ocean access there might be. So those are the areas in which I'd highly recommend. You're going to go somewhere. Where do I even start? Those are the places to go. Couple comments. It looks like, where can someone pick those up? I think it's Jesus. I'm not sure what specifically you were wondering about for lures, but any of the bait shops that I just mentioned, you can definitely pick those different lures up. The ones that I was highlighting from Stephanie, the bass bugs and the buzz baits on the top, Fleet Farm, Mills Fleet Farm has those lures, so you could go online and purchase those there. Stanley Jigs is one I was talking about a lot too. A lot of the gear I showed you came from Stanley. I'm a big fan. Actually, there's a hat right here. Stanley Jigs has an online store. You can purchase anything from those frogs, those rivets, to different kind of bass jigs from. And then let's see, who else? Nate says you're doing a great job. Everyone and Cassie say hi. Thanks. You're welcome. And let's just make sure we have everyone here. It looks like Therese has joined. Hi, Therese. Thanks for joining. Any other questions or thoughts, please let me know. But that was kind of the Cliff Notes version. And then the last thing I will say too is, for someone who is clumsy like me, you should always have a nice little first aid kit. So something that I'm always packing, especially nowadays, make sure you have your Purell, your wet wipes in your Ziploc baggie, and then I do have a nice little kind of packet here of different Band-Aids. Things happen. You might get a hook in the hand. You might get a cut or scrape from a fish. So just make sure that you're prepared and always thinking about kind of those ancillary things that you should pack. When you're preparing for a trip, make yourself a little list. You know, that's what I do every time, is just kind of checking to make sure I have all the bait and all kind of the terminal tackle and lures that I need.
That is really, really good stuff. I liked your tip about, talk to the tackle shops when you go someplace new. That's what they're there for. I always like to hit them up before I even leave. I'll shoot them an email or something and saying, we hit up to Lake Ontario for salmon. What are they hitting on? What's the depth they're normally hitting? So I know, what color spoons or what I'm dragging around, but it's a great tip. That's a great resource, and you got to tap into those folks. That's
Absolutely.
really good, Katie.
One thing I will say on that, just one quick example, is I'm very much knowledgeable with open water fishing and freshwater and saltwater. I'm more of an ice fishing angler than I used to be now as well. But I am brand new, really, really new to fly fishing. And I had the opportunity to go out to Livingston, Montana about a year ago, had no idea what I was doing at all, and did exactly that, George. I looked at Livingston, Montana. I Googled the different like fly shops around there, and I said,
Right.
Here's the situation with a group of people. We don't know what we're doing. What advice do you have? Not only did they give me advice on guides to go with, but they gave me advice on what the river was doing at that time and what kind of flies to throw.
Yeah, that's really important. It's just, use whatever resources you have available. And it looks like you have some great tackle setups there. I mean, you're prepared for anything. And I think that's the key. No matter where you go, you can pick up on short notice, go wherever you want to go, and you're ready to hit the water running.
Absolutely. And then the last thing from an apparel perspective, I do recommend. Now, I don't recommend the pink for everyone because not everyone likes pink, but this is a great little recommendation. Even if you're not fly fishing, go ahead and pick up a vest. Go to Fleet Farm, go online, see if you can pick up one of these vests, because this is something that's lightweight that you can have on your person, especially if you're doing shore fishing. And you can put a bunch of the tackle that I just showed you right in these pockets. There are so many pockets in here, keeping it very simple.
It's good for your stuff too, your hemostats, your line cutters, and all that stuff that you need that you can never find when you really need it.
Right. Exactly right.
Well, that's great, Katie. I really thank you for all the information on that. Does anybody else have questions? I mean, that was a ton of information. I can't believe how good a job you did on that. That was fantastic.
Thank you, George. Appreciate it. And happy to, you saw that, just a glimpse of the tackle that I have. So happy to dig into something. Maybe we have an opportunity to talk more about saltwater fishing next
Sure.
time.
That's probably a good idea. But I know if I ever run out of tackle, I know who to call. That's for sure.
You want to ever go get a Goliath grouper or an 18-foot shark? You let me know.
We'll figure that one out. But Katie, how about you hold on for a few minutes here? And I think what we're going to do is I want you to hang out and see what some of the folks here are catching on our trophy board. Okay.
Love it.
So hang tight. Don't go anywhere. And we're going to take a look at our trophy board for this week. So let's take a look at what we have going on. All right. So up first, we have Eric Goodstall. Now, middle of summer, sometimes fishing's tough, but Eric always gets on these monster bluegills. I mean, how's that? A couple of them for the barbecue is some really good eating. Also, my good friend Justin Lerner out getting some lake trout. I think that was Round Valley. I'm not sure, but from looking in the background, I think he's out there, and there's always great fish out there in Round Valley.
Justin, I need to fish with you because that's
yeah, right.
For me.
Justin gets in some monster fish all the time. You should see the pike he gets, Katie. I know you like them pike.
For sure.
Also, Tim Keebler, he's out catching some of those really nice bronzebacks out there in the Delaware River. Tim's just a great guide out there, and he's always on those fish. Paul Chickarine out there on Lake Wallenpaupack. He's getting some great walleye last week. It looks like this week he's out getting some great striper. Good luck there, Paul. That's some beauties. Our own Josh Taylor is out with Steve Kolnak. I think this was actually yesterday. They were out getting some fluke here right off of New Jersey. So the fluke bite is still hot. Great to see.
Way to go.
Yeah.
Awesome job, Josh.
And here we have 8-year-old Madeline and her Uncle Sean. Now, I heard that Madeline caught this fish herself. I think she got a little help from Uncle Sean, but holy cow, how is that for a catfish, man? I mean, I'd like to catch one of them. And here you have a little 8-year-old girl bringing them in as well. Really good work.
Lessons.
Yeah, right. Last we have up is Ryan Lawrence. He's an 8-year-old getting a 5-pound bass. This is out in the Monroe County, Carbon County border. Some great fish in there. I know we caught a few more, but they don't want me to spot burn. So they said, please don't tell them our spot. But it looks like these young guys are out getting some beautiful fish. How's that for a little 8-year-old guy getting a nice 5-pounder, huh?
Look at that smile.
I know. That's what I was thinking. I think he's hooked on fishing for life there. So that's our trophy board for this week. And some really nice fish. I can't wait till the weather starts cooling down and the fish start biting a little more. We're going to have a whole lot more fish on there. But thank you, everyone else. Please be sure to send me those pics. You can email them to me at poconogeorge@outlook.com. We'd love to hear from you. Please keep sending them in. Now, Katie, guess what?
What?
It is time for our trivia giveaway.
Woohoo!
And we have a very special gift from our friends at Stanley Jigs. They're giving us a 64-piece ultimate rivet kit. This is one of their top-of-the-line kits. It's got 58 frogs, 5 frog hooks, and a great little plano box to keep it all organized. This is a $52 value they're giving us for our trivia question today. So I hope you guys are all ready to go. I see Garrett's already saying, did I miss the trivia? No, you're right on time. So here is our question for this week. And the winner will get this rivet kit right from Stanley Jigs. Again, thank you to those great folks for this great prize today. So here's our question. What common carnivorous fish gives birth to its young live? Is it a grass carp, a sperm whale, or a shark? Which one is it, guys? First one that gives me the correct answer is going to win that great rivet kit from Stanley Jigs. Come on, you guys can get this one. I tried to make it easy for you. First person that gives me the right answer wins. Samantha? No, it's not the sperma. Jen Wong. Correct, Jen. Jen, you finally won one. He's been playing this for weeks and been trying to win this thing. Jen, congratulations. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's the shark, guys. I know everybody was thinking a whale, but a whale's a mammal. Remember that. So, yeah, it's a shark. Thank you very much, Jen. Jen, I'm going to hook up with you after the show. I'll get your address, and we'll get this pack right out to you from the great folks at Stanley Jigs, okay? That was great. I really love to see that. So what do you think, Katie? How about we wrap up this show for the week? Let me bring you back in here.
Sounds like a plan, George.
Yeah, that was a great show. You had so much good information. I hope you guys really appreciate that. Katie's a wealth of knowledge. She's a great friend of mine. Check her out on YouTube. There's a couple of videos with her on my YouTube channel, and we'll have you out here again. I think we should talk about some saltwater because we only touched on that a little bit this time.
It's a whole different world with saltwater, and it is exciting, and it has stolen this Midwest girl's heart, that's for sure.
Without a doubt. So how about we plan another trip with you again, and we're going to wrap up this show, okay?
That sounds great. Thanks so much, George, and tight lines, everyone.
Thank you very much, Katie. Just hang on because I got to talk to you for a second. But as we close out, I got to thank a few folks. Again, the great folks at Stanley Jigs for that great kit for a giveaway. I couldn't thank them anymore. Also, Tony Maja Products, thefisherman.com. And don't forget, email us those pictures. Send us your comments. We love hearing from you guys. PoconoGeorge@outlook.com. And we're going to wrap up the show, and we will see you next week. Thank you very much, guys, and we will talk to you soon.